Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. Additionally, Flipside Gaming is going to be giving away a box of Battle Bond to celebrate my 20,000 subscribers. For entry, all you have to do is use the promo code MTGMudsta on any order over $10 and you'll be entered to win. You can do multiple entries for each time you use the promo code. The time frame for this giveaway is between June 1st and June 30th, with the drawing happening in July. Goodness, it's a hot one today, so hopefully my brain doesn't melt while I'm recording this because I've turned off my air conditioning. This game has me playing Trostani, and I keep a hand with Resto Angel, Wall of Omens, Wall of Blossoms, Elvish Visionary, Temple of Plenty, Greater Good, and Worldly Tutor. John is playing his Silas and Tymna deck, and keeps a hand with Aethersworn Canonist, Island, Swamp, Conjurer's Closet, Golem Foundry, Edgar Wastes, and Glassdusk Hulk. Bill is playing Edgar Markov, and he keeps a hand with Yahenni, Plains, Skullclamp, Mountain, Stormkirk Noble, Blood Artist, and Stensia Masquerade. Lastly, Eric is playing his Ludevic and Bruse deck, and keeps an Otherworldly Journey, 2 Islands, a Crow and Crusader, Path of Anger's Flame, a Mountain, and Jace's Sanctum. John wins the die roll and starts us off. John plays an Edgar Wastes and passes. Bill plays a Mountain and casts Stormkirk Noble. Edgar Markov's Eminence ability triggers, and Bill gets a 1/1 black vampire token. I play a Temple of Plenty, and scry, keeping it on top. Eric plays a Mountain, and casts a Crow and Crusader. John plays a Swamp, and takes 1 to get a white to cast Aethersworn Canonist. Bill plays a Plains, and casts Skullclamp. He clamps his token, and draws 2 before passing. I play a tapped Croson Verge, and pass to Eric. Eric plays an Island, and hits me for 1 with his Crusader before passing to John. John plays an Island, and pays 3 to cast Metalworker. Bill plays an Unclaimed Territory, naming Vampires. He then pays 3 to cast Olivia, mobilized for war, and gains a Vampire token. He uses the Olivia trigger, which I realize now that I'm doing the narration he couldn't have because she was still in the stack, and discards a card to give the new Vampire token a +1/+1 counter and haste. Moving to combat, he swings the Noble and the token at me for 3. The Noble gains a counter upon hitting me, and Bill passes turn. I play another tap land, Canopy Vista, and cast Wall of Omens, drawing a card. Eric plays an Island, and casts Ludevic before passing. John plays a Rogue's Passage, and plays a Wing Splicer, gaining a 3/3 Golem token with flying. John then taps the Metalworker, and reveals 3 artifacts, one of which is Wurmcoil Engine, which he then casts with the Metalworker mana. Bill plays a Plains, and casts Orzhov Signet. He then casts Yahenni, getting another Vampire token. Bill sacrifices it before moving to combat to give Yahenni indestructible, and swings it at John and the Noble at me. John stops Yahenni with a Golem, and I put a wall in front of the Noble. For my turn, I cast Wall of Blossoms in my main phase, drawing a card. I then play a Forest, and I pass. Eric plays a Mountain, wondering where his white mana is, and casts Jace's Sanctum before passing. John plays a Watery Grave, taking 2 to have it come into play untapped. He then swings Wurmcoil at Bill for 6, and gains 6 when Bill doesn't block. John then taps the Metalworker, revealing Conjurer's Closet, netting 2 colorless, and taps 3 lands to pay for it. At the end of turn, he puts the Closet trigger on the Wing Splicer, who flickers and gives John another Golem token upon entering. At the end of John's turn, I cast Worldly Tutor to find Wood Elves. Bill casts a Blood Artist in his main phase, and gets another token. Bill then taps some of his creatures and some lands to cast Obelisk of Erd, which he names Vampires when it enters. He then swings Yahenni at John for 4, who takes the hit. I wonder what I draw for my turn, and I pay 4 mana in my main phase to cast Return to Dust, exiling Metalworker and Wurmcoil Engine. Bill is happy with my targets, and offers not to swing at me for a turn. Eric draws and plays a Plains, and casts Otherworldly Journey on his Crow and Crusader, splicing Evermind onto it. Eric scries first, and bottoms the card. This has the Crusader's Heroic ability trigger, and Eric gains a Soldier token, and then draws a card. The Crusader is then blinked away until end of turn, and it comes back at the end of his turn with the +1/+1 counter on it. John takes 1 from the Edgar Wastes to cast Tymna, and swings a Golem at both Bill and I. John then pays 2 in his post-combat main phase to draw 2 cards from Tymna's ability. John then plays an Ancient Tomb as his land for turn, and at his end step, he puts the Closet trigger once more onto the Splicer to get another Golem token. Bill clamps one of his tokens, which doesn't die, and casts Outpost Siege. He names dragons, and moving to combat, he swings everything he can at John except for the Blood Artist. John chooses once again not to block, and takes the hit for 23. Bill then passes. In my main phase, I cast Wood Elves, and go and grab Temple Garden, taking 2 to have it come into play untapped, and passing. Eric plays an Island for turn, and moves to combat. He swings everything at Bill, but unlike Bill, has only 4 damage on the board. Bill decides not to block, and Eric takes this chance to cast Path of Anger's Flame, splicing Evermind onto it to draw a card. He scries from the Jace's Sanctum and draws. Bill then takes 9, and Eric draws at the end of turn with his Ludevic trigger. Bill remembers he should have put a counter on his noble, and John moves to combat for his turn. He swings a golem apiece at Bill and myself again, and Tymna tags along to attack me. Bill and I take 3, while Tymna bounces off my wall, but still gains John 2. John then pays that 2 life to draw 2 cards in the second main phase with Tymna's trigger. John then casts a Phyrexian Metamorph and has it come in as a copy of the Wing Splicer, gaining yet another golem. At the end of turn, he flickers the Metamorph and has it come in again as a Splicer, gaining another token. Bill pays 3 to cast Stensia Masquerade in his main phase and moves to combat, swinging everything at John once more, and I decide to get rid of the Obelisk, casting Nature's Claim to blow it up and give Bill 4 life. Eric also wants to draw more cards, but since Evermind is, well, Evermind, he has to splice it, and does so onto an Ethereal Haze, fogging the combat step. Bill then passes turn. I draw for turn, and pass to Eric. Eric casts a Talisman of Progress in his main phase, and brings out a Triton Fortune Hunter. He passes, and at the end of turn, John casts Path to Exile on Bill's Blood Artist. Bill sacrifices most of his board to Yahenni, and deals Den to John, draining 5 with the Artist, and dealing 5 with the Outpost Siege. For John's turn, he takes a page from Bill's book and moves to combat, swinging 4 golems and Tymna at Bill. Bill has no blockers and takes 14, while John gains 2 life from Tymna's lifelink. John then pays 1 life to draw a card with Tymna's ability, and moves to his end step. He puts the Closet ability on the Metamorph, and has it come back into play as a Wing Splicer. With the Enter the Battlefield ability on stack, I flash in Restoration Angel to flicker my own creature, Wood Elves, and find Scattered Groves. Bill plays a Swamp and casts a Danto Vanguard, who brings out another Vampire token courtesy of Edgar Markov. Bill then clamps the token, drawing 2 and targeting John with his Outpost Siege trigger. John responds by tapping the Ancient Tomb and dies. Bill then casts Soul Ring and brings out a Stormkirk Condemned, gaining another token. He then casts Viscera Seer, gaining another token, and taps Soul Ring to help him clamp another Vampire token. He deals 1 to Eric, and Bill then clamps the second token, dealing another 1 to Eric and drawing 2 more. He passes to me. I cast Trostani in my main phase and pay 2 to cast Elvish Visionary, gaining 1 life. I draw a card as well, and I pass to Eric. Eric casts Bruse in his main phase and puts Bruce's Enter the Battlefield trigger on Ludevic. He moves to combat and swings Ludevic at Bill. Before moving to blockers though, Eric exiles Ire of Kaminari to cast Blazing Shoal, giving Ludevic +4/+0. Eric then splices Lifted by Clouds and Evermind onto the shoal, and Eric scries and keeps it on top before drawing a card. Bill then drops to 4 and Eric gains 10. Eric then drops a Glacial Fortress in his second main phase and passes. Bill plays a Mountain and casts Legion Lieutenant, gaining another Vampire token. He then casts Pulse Tracker, gaining a further token. Bill puts the clamp onto one of his new tokens. He swings what hasn't come into play this turn at Eric. Before blockers are declared though, Bill discards a card to Stormkirk Condemned, giving his board a further +1/+1, resulting in 17 total damage headed at Eric. Eric decides to just take the hit. Normally Bill would be putting counters on his Vampire because of the Masquerade, but he knows that in his second main phase he wants to sacrifice his board to Yahenni to deal a further 7 damage to Eric, and draws 2 from the Skullclamp Vampire dying. Bill then casts Champion of Dusk, getting his Edgar Markov token first, and then loses 3 to draw 3 when it enters. Bill then clamps the newly made token, drawing 2 and dealing 1 to Eric. He sacks the Champion as well to deal 1 to Eric before passing to me. I pay 6 to cast an Ulvenwald Hydra, stacking the trigger to go find the land, and then gain life. I grab Rogue's Passage, and gain 7. I then move to combat, and swing Wood Elves and Visionary at Bill for 2. Eric taps out on his turn to cast the Unspeakable, which I don't know what it does because we can't talk about it. Eric then passes. I draw for turn, and cast Greater Good. I follow up with a Reclamation Sage, gaining 1 and having to blow up Eric's Sanctum. I then pass turn. Eric untaps for turn, and John gives me a die to represent how big my Hydra is. Eric then main phase casts Fact or Fiction, and I'm the only legal opponent, and has me make the piles. I don't know what any of these cards do, so I make my 2 piles and hope for the best. Eric takes the pile with a Mountain and 100 Talon Strike. He then plays the Mountain and moves to combat. Eric swings Bruse and the Unspeakable at me, giving the Unspeakable Bruce's trigger. Before blocks, I sacrifice the Hydra to Greater Good, drawing 7 and discarding 3. Eric casts 100 Talon Strike on the Unspeakable and splices Evermind and Lifted by Clouds, which targets the Fortune Hunter onto the strike. Eric draws 2 cards and deals 14 in the air as I block Bruse with the wall, and Eric gains 14 life. Eric then gets to bring back 2 arcane spells and brings back Blazing Shoal and Otherworldly Journey. At the end of his turn, Ludevic triggers, drawing Eric a card. He then discards Crone Skyguard and passes. For my turn, I move to combat, swinging the Restoration Angel at Eric for 3. I then sacrifice it to Greater Good, drawing 3 and discarding 3. I follow up with probably the most telegraphed Day of Judgment ever, before casting Green Sun Zenith where X is 2. I grab V2 Gazi Guildmage and I pass to Eric. Eric draws for turn and plays an island. He then brings out Anax and Siamede, and then casts a Crowan Conscriptor. In my first main phase, I pay 7 to cast a Myria Shepherd and play a Plains. This triggers the Shepherd, and I bring back Avenger of Zendikar, gaining 8 plant tokens and passing turn. Eric plays a Mountain and casts Artisan of Forms. He then casts Otherworldly Journey, targeting the Conscriptor, and splices Evermind onto it. He also targets the Shepherd with the Heroic Steel trigger, but I sacrifice it with the trigger on the stack to Greater Good to draw 4 and pitch 3. Eric then brings back out Bruse, putting the trigger on Anax and Siamede, and swings them at me. I put the Avenger in front of them and sacrifice it to Greater Good to negate any life gain Eric was hoping for. I draw 5 and discard 3 before moving to my turn. In my main phase, I cast Karmic Guide, who brings back the Shepherd. I then play a Plains, which triggers the Shepherd, and I bring back my Ulvenwald Hydra. I then go and grab a Plains from my library, which triggers the Shepherd again, and I bring back Avenger of Zendikar. This gives me another 10 plant tokens, and Eric remembers to bring back his Conscriptor before starting his turn. Eric plays a Mountain for his turn, and does a quick count-up. He casts an Eerie Procession, and splices Lifted by Clouds onto it, targeting the Conscriptor once more. He targets my Hydra to steal, which I sacrifice to Greater Good to draw 10 and discard 3. Eric then goes to find Overblaze, and I realize I have no idea what half of Eric's cards do. Eric then casts Lifted by Clouds, targeting the Conscriptor, and splicing the Overblaze onto it, targeting Anax and Siamede. He targets the Shepherd with the Conscriptor trigger, and in response, I activate Croson Verge, sacrificing it to go and find 1 Plains, and unfortunately a Forest because I've run out of Plains. I have the Shepherd trigger, bringing back Regal Force, and I draw 21 cards. I then sacrifice the Shepherd, and draw and discard. The Anax and Siamede heroic trigger also happens, and Eric's board gains +1/+1 and Trample. And we realize I should have 2 landfall triggers for the Avenger, giving my plant tokens 2 more +1/+1 counters. Eric swings his board at me, and gives Anax and Siamede the Bruse trigger, giving them lifelink and double strike. I put 2 plants in front of the Artisan, and I put 2 in front of Bruse, and then put Karmic Guide in front of Anax and Siamede. With the blockers declared, Eric casts Blazing Shoal, by exiling Overblaze to give Anax and Siamede +4/+0. Unfortunately for Eric, having drawn like 30 cards this turn, I have the answer with Swords to Plowshares, and I exile Anax and Siamede while the spell is on the stack. His team does get another Anax and Siamede trigger, pumping them by a further +1/+1. With all that said and done, the results are that Bruse lives through it, the Artisan dies, I lose a few plant tokens, and I take 6 in the air from the Conscriptor. For my turn, I play a Forest, pumping up my plants even more. I then cast Godpharaoh's Gift and move to combat, exiling the Ulvenwald Hydra from my graveyard. This has it come in as a 4/4 black zombie Hydra, and I get to go find another land. I find a Sunpetal Grove, pumping the plants by another +1/+1 counter, and swing everything at Eric for the game. Game review time. So, I know it seemed like Bill kept focusing on one person at a time, but I frankly think that's the only way to play an aggro deck if you don't have a way to generate infinite creatures. You have to kind of skirt the line between a huge threat or just one threat for one person, and basically not make everyone else want to gang up on you. Unfortunately, only after this game did I learn that John's deck was actually a Golem tribal deck that he's been trying to make work for a long time. When I asked him why he didn't run something like Sharoom, he felt that Silas and Tymna were a lot better in the command zone since they offered him card draw, lifelink, and being able to return things to his hand. He certainly had a lot of golems this game, and I could see how it would be very powerful with different splicers on the field giving his golems different abilities. Eric's Arcane deck was something to behold, and using heroic cards was very special. I'm not sure I'd ever want to build a deck like this, but it was fun to see, and I'm glad Eric was able to pilot it on camera so that everyone could enjoy it for what it was. He had a lot of interesting card choices, and being able to splice spells onto other spells and then be able to discard them later on to pay for other spells like Blazing Shoal seems pretty cool. Trostani continues to get better and better, and there's a lot of cards from Battlebond that I'm looking to test out, mainly Bramble Sovereign. I think that's going to be a fantastic way to make token copies of creatures, which I can then populate later on. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.